So, Brig, what's the point of her in Overwatch 2? She lost her stun. It's just going to be terrible, right? Well, the good news is she's not quite as bad as I thought, though she does definitely still have some question marks around does this really make sense. But let's start with the good. The good is, of course, that Bash's cooldown dropped from 7 seconds to 5, and she now has 50 damage on it, and it procs Inspire, but she's given up the stun. That actually helps quite a bit with her sustained damage. She can bash people on a 5-second cooldown, she can throw out that whip shot. That's a fair amount of damage between those. You can bash yourself in, swing, whip shot, swing a couple more times, and then bashes up again, whip shot is up again, all those things. Like, that's a fair amount of damage that she can be chunking out with her abilities quite consistently. So that's solid. You're not going to be bash whip shotting, eliminating tracers, anything like that. They can recall out of it, they can blink out of it, no big deal there, but it is pretty nice. And that triple distance or so that it has now is pretty good as well. It really allows you to do what you want to do now, which is let your tank go in, let your tank initiate, but then you can almost instantly follow them in with your bash as long as your bash also hits someone. Because you get a nice chunk of damage, you proc that Inspire immediately, but you let your tank take that sort of initial focus for the first instant there because he was the first thing, so the eyeballs went to him, those motion-trained eyeballs, that sort of thing. So that's pretty nice. That feels pretty good. Also, when it comes to the stun is gone, but when you bash people, you do get, I'll call it the game trying to line up animations nicely, sort of an animation lock of sorts. It doesn't cancel anything. If you stunned this coalescing Moira, for example, it would not cancel it, but it does make their movement almost a little bit controlled for a fraction of a second. Not a second, not a half second, but like a fraction of a second there where their movement is a little bit controlled, and it's going to be a little easier than you might think to hit your whip shot. Not as easy as it would on a stun target, not as easy as it would be for other people to line up hits if, they'd been stunned, but it is going to help a little bit with that. So that's kind of cool. That does sort of help out a bit. And then the last really nice thing about her is because she has that 15 health per second, we're now in a situation where she doesn't get stuck in those places where she can't afford to get her Inspire going because she's not full health, and if she tries to get her Inspire going when she's not full health and Inspire is her only self-heal, she'll die. She used to have a lot of those in Overwatch 1 if her other support wasn't paying attention to her or was dead. Those are mostly gone. You actually have less downtime because you can just wait a couple seconds for that to get going, and then boom, you're good, and you can get your real Inspire going, and that's pretty great. But now let's get into the less good. So, she's got some cool stuff with the bash, she's got some cool sustained damage there, but what's the point? If you're looking to play her here, why would you ever play her over the Frog, Lucio, or Moira? They both give you more brawl power, and they're both more slippery. So if you're swapping into heroes, swapping off of your old hero, your Zen, your Ana, because you're just getting picked on too much, you go, I want a slippery hero, Lucio and Moira are more slippery. If you're trying to upgrade the strength of your brawl, Brig does plenty of healing. Brig puts out some pretty respectable damage. Obviously not Zen levels of damage, but some pretty respectable damage. But when you look at that, Moira's going to be more value in a brawl. Having that on-demand strong healing is better than what Brig is bringing to the table. Lucio brings that similar aura healing to the table, but also does it in the poke phase, as well as shortening the poke phase by helping your team get in more quickly at that speed, even being able to hit a speed amp to just chase something down, really help that team go run it over. They're better. They're both better when it comes to enabling brawl, supporting brawl, and when it comes to slipperiness themselves. So where's her place? Well, her place is probably actually as a Lucio substitute on ladder. Is in situations where you go, hey, the player doesn't have the mechanical skills yet to play Lucio. It is hard to do the wall riding with Lucio, to hit those shots with Lucio. Brig is going to be easier to execute on, similar to what Moira would have been in Overwatch 1, where frequently BAP was, almost always in fact, BAP was a better pick than Moira. Very few exceptions where it wasn't true, but most of the time BAP was a better pick than Moira. But you might see someone pick Moira because, hey, they didn't feel like they had the skills for BAP yet. They wanted that Moira who had a bit lower of a floor to get into playing. And we're probably going to see some similar things with Brig, where she's taking Lucio's spot for that. That said, Lucio Brig doesn't feel terrible either. Double aura healing there feels a little bit better than it did in Overwatch 1, so hey, that's okay. In terms of who you're attacking when you go in with your Brig, if you're trying to get value, obviously if you have to hit their tank, whatever, he shouldn't instantly roll you as long as you let your tank go in first, but you're gonna prefer to put damage on squishies. If you can bother supports like Mercy's, Moira's, Lucio's, that may be her special spot, bothering Moira's and Lucio's, for example, who got in, that's pretty good, though against better Lucio's, they'll never actually be available to you. They'll be up there writing on the wall, shooting, whatever, you bashing them isn't going to be a real thing. Moira's can play a little bit further back and still be doing plenty of work with their right click. So that may be what she's looking to do. You can also, of course, take out DPS pretty quickly if they're not paying attention to you, but it's obviously the thing where they can take you out pretty darn quickly as well. You have okay damage, but you aren't, soldier levels of damage, certainly. So if you don't start right on top of him, and even if you do, it's not going to be the greatest time in the world for you. But if you jump a Junkrat, a soldier, when they're not looking at you, when they were too close to a fight, a Sojourn who slid too much into the fight, and you go, oh, now she's vulnerable, sure, you can take him. You can take him if you have any sort of lead there. So that's kind of my thoughts for now. Doesn't feel as bad, doesn't look as bad, having looked at some of the scrim stuff, having looked at some of the bigger Brig specialist streamers, having played a fair amount of her myself to prepare for this. She's okay, but I think most of what we're going to find is she's going to be very similar to old Moira, where it's a case of, hey, you're playing this hero because there's a more mechanically dependent alternative that you don't feel you'd get enough value out of yet, which in this case would be Lucio. But let me know what you guys think. Are you enjoying her? Do you think she desperately needs a rework? What would that rework look like? Is there some great comp that I'm not thinking about? Is actually Lucio Brig the best absolute thing in the world and she's going to replace Moira? Is her ability to fight other supports going to be really valuable? Let me know in the comments down below. If you're enjoying the content, please drop a like, consider subscribing, and I hope to see you in the next one. Obviously, I'll do an update on this as we learn more, as we see more. This is, of course, my day 2 impression. See you in the next one. Thanks. Temporal out.